Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is now just 8 days away from its official release by writer and director J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio, as well as creator George Lucas. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for future Star Wars content. Now, one thing about this movie is that J.J. Abrams is of course making many different risks in this film by doing a lot of bold decisions in this movie in order to really make the film cater to the general audience, which by the way I think was the first big mistake by Disney and Lucasfilm by restructuring the plot of Episode 9 to make it appeal to literally the general audience who knows nothing about Star Wars at all whatsoever, and that this film is not as much catered to the Star Wars fans per se, if I want to make it more simple like that. Now, with that being said, alright, as we are just 8 days away, the premiere happened over in Japan just yesterday on the 11th, and then of course on the 16th over in Los Angeles we got the other premiere, which by the way we're going to be hearing a lot of different reactions about this movie more and more as we get closer to that premiere date, where a lot of, the Japanese reactions will start surfacing on the internet in just a couple of days from now. Now, on top of all of this, what's really, quite unfortunate about The Rise of Skywalker is that there were a lot of decisions made in this movie that sound absolutely ridiculous and come off as worse than The Last Jedi. So let's dive right into it. Now, specifically, shot descriptions consisting of a sequence where it's explained that toward the end of the third act of the film, it's explained that one of the segments in the film is said to involve a major battle over the surface of Exegol and just over Palpatine's base, where Ben and Rey will later fight Palpatine on the planet. It's said that one of the major sequences in the battle involves a segment in which Janna, Finn, Poe, and Rose group up and form a plan to take on the Final Order. Now, which is described to be a combination of both the First Order and the new Sith Empire. It's said that one of the segments is said to lead to a sequence in which they begin to hop on these horses and invade the top of a Star Destroyer since their transports lost power, and they decide to land on the Star Destroyer and begin to fight the Sith troopers in the scene with the space horses. It's said that the scene is very similar to Canto Bight, where the horses are running through at top speed and knocking down Sith troopers, and that the sequence is best explained as a mix between Game of Thrones with Star Wars. The scene is explained to have a medieval feel to it as Finn and Janna shoot at the Sith troopers while they invade the Final Order by using their horses, where even some of the shots involves moments in which the horses kick the stormtroopers down on the ground and knocking them off of the Star Destroyers down to their deaths. The Sith troopers in the film are said to not pose a threat in any way, shape, or form, and even miss their targets several times, and are no better than the average stormtrooper seen in the last 8 Star Wars films. The scene is also said to have many comedic parts in the battle, where both Finn and Janna are fighting the troopers along with Dominic Monaghan's character in the movie, who fights by their side. This entire scene is said to continue back and forth, as Ben and Rey fight Sidious inside of his throne room, and is the battle equivalent to the battle on the forest moon of Endor. Alright, so let's go over a couple of parts about this, and as to why this sounds absolutely ridiculous, and if I really have to be honest here, not sugarcoating it at all, it sounds horrendous. When we look at The Rise of Skywalker here, this sounds like the worst decision that you could make for the ending battle of Episode 9. Now granted, there is going to be a space battle in this movie over the surface of the world of Exegol, but they're also focusing on the ground of Exegol, or kind of, because they're on top of a Star Destroyer fighting the Final Order. Let's talk about the Final Order here and why this sounds like a parody of Star Wars. So basically what happens at the end of the film is that, well, in the beginning of the movie, Palpatine tells Kylo he wants to start an armada, and by doing so, he wants to combine his new Sith Empire with the remnants of the First Order that he was controlling via Snoke for so many years. And by combining the two forces, it is now called the Final Order. This sounds ridiculous. I mean, the Final Order. Who comes up with this? I don't know if J.J. Abrams came up with this, or if Chris Terrio came up with that idea, but it sounds absolutely horrible. There's an actual TV spot. It's in a different language. I believe it was German. If you translate it, you can actually, I believe it was Spanish, my correction, is that in that TV spot, if you translate it, you do hear Palpatine saying, "Initiate the Final Order." Matches directly up with this. And let me tell you, I mean, this sounds horrible. This is said to line up and be the equivalent of the Battle of Endor. Basically, not the space part of the Battle of Endor, but the ground part of Endor, where they're actually on the forest moon. So this is the equivalent of, you know, the rebellion with the Ewoks fighting the First Order, or should I say fighting the Empire at the time, how that's going to mirror the Resistance fighting the First Order, or what is now known as the Final Order. And this sounds ridiculous also with the horses involved. Who comes up with these horses? It's said to be a mixture between Game of Thrones and Star Wars. Please no. I mean, I really don't know why Disney and Lucasfilm have this obsession with using Game of Thrones as an inspiration for Star Wars material. I mean, we've seen a great example of them hiring many cast members from Game of Thrones, which I guess is fine. You know, we've had Emilia Clarke as Kira in Solo: A Star Wars Story, and we've also had Gwendoline Christie as, you know, Captain Phasma, so, you know, they do work. You know, the cast work as Star Wars characters, you know, they can work, but it just goes to show their obsession with Game of Thrones, and now they're actually using it as full-on scenes, where they're combining Game of Thrones with Star Wars. You have these horses that look like more of an actual Earth-like horse than the horses that we got in The Last Jedi, where Finn, Poe, Rose, and Jannah all take on the Final Order. They land on top of the Star Destroyer because their transports lose power from Palpatine's Force Storm. So they go on top of the Star Destroyer, they face the Sith Troopers, and even the horses are able to knock the Sith Troopers off of the Star Destroyer, plunging them down to their deaths, down to the surface. I mean, I think there's no other way to explain this, but this just sounds absolutely ridiculously bad. It really does. If I really have to not sugarcoat this, I am being 100% honest, and I think that's really important right now, is that this particular scene sounds horrible. It sounds like that it is making their own version of the Battle of Endor on the Forest Moon, and really just making it the worst case scenario possible, is that you have these new characters that not a lot of people seem to really care about, no less using horses to fight these Sith Troopers. Now, okay, I get it, you know, if you look at Return of the Jedi, we had Ewoks, of course, we had Ewoks. I understand that. But at the same exact time, these are characters riding horses. Something that you would see in an actual movie in reality, like Game of Thrones or something around those lines, of an animal that is real in our world, basically combining that with Star Wars. It just doesn't mix, in my opinion, and I don't know if you guys agree or disagree, but it really sounds like it's going to be worse than The Last Jedi. This is worse than The Last Jedi's ending, or should I say the Battle of Crait. It really is. It's way worse than the Battle of Crait, the final battle on the ground. It's horrible. Well, when we look at The Rise of Skywalker here, how the Sith Troopers are said to be no more special than your average Stormtrooper. Why the hype over these Sith Troopers, and why even call them Sith Troopers at all? I also could never wrap my head around as to why they are called Sith Troopers. Now, yes, the description lists them because they're inspired by, you know, the legacy of the Sith and these dark side warriors. But it still doesn't make sense. It kind of just sounds like that J.J. Abrams wanted to make these Stormtroopers sound cool in order for Disney to really sell them as toys better. And I'm going to be very interested to see how well the Sith Troopers sell as figures and figurines and toys, whatever have you, right? So, the ending of this movie, this is said to cut back and forth between Ben Solo and Rey, fighting Palpatine as he uses his Force Storm technique. And it's going to cut back and forth, just how the Battle of Endor cut back and forth with Luke fighting Vader and Palpatine. It's the same exact scenario here. Same exact scenario. And you can see how it's almost like a cut and paste sequence. So anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.